Good afternoon. That's one of the worst ones of the week. And you know who we've got back there, don't you? So let's try it again. Good afternoon. Have we got a Geraldine beverage? It's Geraldine's 49th wedding anniversary today. And does anyone know what the 49th, what the traditional gift is for a 49th anniversary? Perseverance for our friends watching online. It's copper, and what a beautiful copper anniversary present would the EL9070 Shield terminal, made by Beck Automation, who is with its internal seamless copper surface. The EL9070 offers good screening between two EtherCAT terminals. And that's just one of the many products that our good friends at Beckhoff. Anyone from Beckhoff here? Who are our event sponsor for today? They're in every continent in the world, but their UK offices are where? Do you want to take a guess? Yeah. Perfect. So I'm sure that our friends at Beckhoff can watch this at a later date and be impressed how well familiar you are with their location. After the event, Julian's going to be signing books down there in our signing tent. We couldn't be more excited. One of our favourite speakers and one of our favourite chairs, Daniel Hahn. So that welcome you gave when I came on. The complete opposite of that for Daniel Hahn and Julian Clary.
Nice. Hello, welcome. How nice to do a 3 o'clock in the afternoon event. You can be home in time for countdown.
Yeah. It's napping time. It's a very good napping time. Make yourselves comfortable. Welcome to Henley. You've done this festival before. You know this part of the world, I presume.
I know this. Yes, I do. And I know this bit of the river. And as we were walking along, I remembered something. When I was 12, I was a coxswain and for Kingston Rowing Club, and we came to Henley Royal Regatta, and I was I was steering the boat, and I think it was just along here. There was those things where you come in. What's it called? Like a sort of raft.
Pontoon.
Is it called a pontoon? Anyway, as I came in too quickly, and I smashed the boat up. Thousands of pounds worth of damage.
And you haven't been back since, and now finally.
And we hadn't done our first race then either. I wasn't very popular.
Very different today. We're going to do no damage at all. Very different. You're not going to break things. Put the glass down gently. There we are. See, it's all going to be fine. What could possibly go wrong? Welcome, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with Julian Clary. We're going to be talking about Curtain Call to Murder, this brilliant new novel, which is out. It's not actually out quite yet, so you get an exclusive copy from our friend at the bell over there. It's out next week. Julian and I will be talking about this great book. I'll ask him to read a couple of bits, I think, along the way, and we will, of course, leave plenty of time for you to ask him questions towards the end. A very brief introduction, only I don't know why I bother because it's Julian Clary, but he is, you'll be surprised to know, a comedian and an actor and an author and a presenter, the author of The Bolds series for children, which is amazing. If you haven't read it, if you know children or just not, because I'm 50 and I love them. Sunday Times best-selling novelist, also of books for grown-ups, Murder Most Fab, Devil in Disguise, and Briefs Encountered. I have to say that very carefully so you get that. Now, as I say, this brilliant new book, Curtain Call to Murder. Before we talk about this book, Julian, can we talk about the beginning of your writing? Murder Most Fab was about more than 15 years ago, I suppose now. What was it that got you to write fiction? Was there a moment when you thought, suddenly this is a thing I want to do?
You don't see a lot over there, do you? I'll turn round a bit. Well, before that was an autobiography, A Young Man's Passage. So that was the first thing I wrote, and then the same publishers said, do you want to do a novel? So that's the quick answer to your question. But I've always liked writing. You know, if you'd asked me when I was a child what I was going to do, I wouldn't have said I want to be a renowned homosexual. I
That was just a bonus.
probably have said I want to write. And I always wrote stories and poems and all right through my life. I just like writing, actually. And I don't mind what I write. I don't mind if it's children's books or murder mystery. And I've got a very good agent, literary agent, and she sort of directs me. It was her idea for me to write for children. And I thought, well, I don't know about that because I don't have any children. But then, of course, I remembered what it was like, and I regressed to being a child. And so that's how that worked. And then she said, right, murder mystery is what people want to read now. And and my other books, there's a lot of murder, a lot of bodies in them, but they're not a whodunit. They're a sort of, why did they bother? So this was interesting, and in the first draft, I wrote the story, this is who was murdered, and this was who murdered them, and this is why. But it was in the second draft, the editor said, well, no, you've got to withhold information. And who knew? And you've got to write red herrings, but which you feel because you know what happened yourself, feels mean, leading people astray. But I managed to overcome that.
So there was a conversation with your editor where you had that sort of quite big, like a structural conversation then?
Yes, we did. And she also said, go and have fun in the second draft. It's taken a long time to write because I've been busy doing, I'm not just a writer, so some of this was written in my dressing room at the London Palladium during Peter Pan or on tour in my digs doing Jesus Christ Superstar. So what I'm saying is my mind wasn't totally on this, and I quite like, and I miss it when it's finished, I quite like having a whole part of my brain, with this secret world going on. And where was I going with this?
Can we just go back a step? When your agent said, cozy crime, this is the thing people want to read now, how quickly did you kind of settle on what the story was going to be? You said first draft was the story, but it's set in theatres, it's set in places that it's set among actors, people I presume you know. I imagine there are real people in here disguised under other names.
Spot Nigel Havers. No, because I've spent a lot of time in theatres and a lot of time at the Palladium. I should be so lucky, but doing panto, and you think a lot. You're standing in the wings and waiting to go on, and you look up, and it's quite a dangerous place in a theatre. There's all sorts of scenery and lights, and things can go wrong and do. 3 times in my life now, a glitter ball has crashed down from the flies, missing me by inches, and those old-fashioned, metal ones. I don't know how it happens because they're on safety chains.
What a way to go, though. Can you imagine? Yes.
And there was one occasion I was at this, somewhere in Australia, and I was leaning forward, speaking to a woman in the front row like you, and as I leant back, a glitter ball crashed down and hit her on the knee. This poor lesbian. And she sued the producers for $1 million, million Australian dollars. About 30 quid, I think. But dangerous things happen. So I thought I would bring that into that would be where the murder happened. And that's also a way of, I don't want to give the story away, but making a murder look like an accident, shall we say. And I'd also, a few years ago, been on tour with The Dresser, the play The Dresser by Ronald Harwood, and they go on tour in this book, and we went on tour just after COVID, and not many people came because people were scared to go out, and so I've that experience of being in a provincial theatre doing a matinee to 65 people and listening to the rain. That sort of slightly wistful world, that's what I wanted to bring into this as well.
Well, there are these glimpses of, because they're on tour, we see a bit of like the Theatre Royal Brighton, which is dingier than it should be really, and Plymouth and Cheltenham and various places. And you really get a sense of the lives of these people who are on tour, but also what it is that makes the Palladium special. The Palladium is this kind of culmination, and it's not like the Theatre Royal Brighton in any respect.
And the other thing to say is when you're on tour like that, you're locked together in the world. The company is your world, and so you don't see anyone else really, and it becomes intense, and people get on your nerves, or you'll have an affair with someone. I mean, I didn't, but people do. So
apparently, yeah.
Yes. So that kind of thing is quite useful when you're writing this sort of book.
You mentioned a Dresser, the play. The main, I suppose, main character of this, Jane, is a dresser, is the company dresser on the show. And I want to talk about her, and actually I might ask you to read about her in a moment, but can you just say briefly, for people who don't know, what actually the job of a dresser is? Because it's a really unusual, very intimate in some ways, but also almost invisible job.
Yes, a dresser is the person in theatre who brings your clothes to your dressing room usually and irons them and does the laundry, and they also help you with quick changes in the wings. But they do a lot more than that. They, certainly for me, at the Palladium, where I've got 12 costume changes quite often.
And they're not insignificant costumes. For anyone who's been to one of these pantos.
And sometimes you need more than one dresser. But anyway, you get to know this person very, very well, because you're with them all day long, and they're pulling your trousers down. And
day after day.
Yes. I mean, I did work out over the course of Panto, if I've got 9 costumes, it's 2 shows a day, that's 18 times a day. My trousers are pulled down, multiply that by 57 shows. It's a lot of...
No wonder you're tired.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they also, my dressers anyway, are very good at judging what mood you're in and what might get you into the right brain space to go on and perform well. And they're underestimated and indeed underpaid. But they see everything, because they're quiet and they're there in the shadows, and it's their job not to be on show themselves, but they watch everyone and they know the gossip, and so the amateur sleuth in my book is the dresser.
And the perfect person who's always there and no one notices.
Yeah, and the book is dedicated to 2 dressers in particular that I've worked with for years, and couldn't really manage without them. And a bad dresser is awful, by contrast.
Right. Would you read a little bit about Jane?
Oh, yes. Taken me by surprise. So, Geraldine, how did everyone know it's your wedding anniversary? Did you email the authorities? Oh, you told me on Twitter. I thought you'd sent a message like it was Panto. Right.
Telegrams now, yeah.
This is the first time we meet Jane properly. Jane Oxley is 36, and there is much to know and admire about her. Jane is about to start work as the dresser for leopard spots. Dressers do much more than just dress. The good ones take care of the inner as well as the outer needs of their charges. They enhance every performance, stroke egos, lighten moods, and pay compliments, like a Michelin chef adding ingredients to their signature dish in a fractious kitchen environment. They polish the sequins, fluff up the feathers, and ensure that the illusion of glamour is seen like a body stocking, whatever the sordid reality of their charges might present. But she is so much more than that. Jane is clever. She carries her cleverness about her person secretly, like a polished conker in her pocket or a mint under her tongue. It radiates and pulsates, all-seeing. You don't have to spend much time with her to realize Jane is bright. Her intelligence is there in the pigment of her iris and the steadiness of her gaze. Her conversation is perceptive, and she has a habit of cutting to the chase, Some people don't bother to notice. Jane may swim in a sea of big egos, but don't underestimate her. She can hold her own. Jane has the ability to enjoy life in adverse circumstances. It would be withering to say she is easily pleased, although some may see it that way. What I mean is she is naturally happy. There is no if only or when about Jane. The sun on her face, the sausage roll in her mouth, these give her pleasure and she acknowledges the sensations. This doesn't take a conscious effort. Jane lives in a suburb of Wolverhampton called New Invention. The house, once gleaming and radiating contentment when her late mother was around, is now dusty and dour with her widowed father's moody presence. Fortunately, Jane isn't there much to put up with this. She escaped. Jane works as a theatrical dresser, ironing and zipping her way around the country on touring productions. Jane has had no action on the man front for some time. She isn't bothered about this and would laugh if you asked her if she wanted a boyfriend. It might be more trouble than it's worth, she'd say. But then it would be nice to have someone looking out for her. She finds nerdy men attractive. Glasses and beige slacks. They hide a strong sex drive, she thinks. All that obsessing over Star Wars or online gaming or Taskmaster means they have feelings and thoughts other than porn and booze. She had such a boyfriend at university called Alan. The theatre design course at Birmingham University had been going well, but then she left to look after her mother, and Alan found someone else within a week. People make assumptions about dressers like Jane, that they are retired dancers or failed actors. No one surely would choose dressing as a career. They think dressers are people who just want to be involved in showbiz at whatever cost, no matter how paltry the wages. Jane knew all of this, but she didn't mind. She was hiding in plain sight. Being a dresser was her destiny, her escape. She had a particular talent for it, attention to detail, a calming presence, and no real interest in financial rewards. She had worked out the limits of money as a means to happiness some time ago. Money bore no relation to life satisfaction, and that was that.
She's a lovely character, and it's so nice to have someone who is kind of guiding us through this, at least partly, who's happy and who's nice and who's untortured.
She's kind of the only one in the book who is.
Well, I was going to say, there's surrounding her. It's not a book that makes you think, I want to be friends with actors.
No, and I was worried about that a bit because theatricals we are quite highly strung, and in that environment there's a lot of egos and rivalry and stuff. But then I thought that some of my favourite books, like the E.F. Benson Map and Lucia books, everyone's awful in those books. And I wanted that sort of enjoyment.
Well, one of the things that you do is you create not only these characters who are fragile and selfish and all kinds of things, real egotists, but also so many different tensions between them. And this, I suppose, is partly setting up these kind of red herrings, that there are old grudges and there are bitchiness and there is jealousy. One thing in particular that I noticed and I was curious about is, there is an actor who thinks he's a proper actor who looks down on the comic because this is a comic who's sort of demeaning the acting profession. And I wonder if that's a thing that you get that sense of that particular dynamic actually does exist.
Well, yes, I've done lots of things, and I've done musical theatre. Well, I can't sing, and I can't dance, but I think it doesn't matter. I think it's mind over matter. And sometimes, when I do a bit of acting, but I'm not versatile in any respect. I can't play a lumberjack. It's sort of it's me doing a character. And
who here would pay to see Julian playing a lumberjack? There we go.
Careful what you wish for. But it's probably in my mind. But I did think sometimes, you imagine people are thinking that. So I put it in the book that people are thinking, who does he think he is? And it's all very well, but it's not proper acting. So that was something to get off my chest in the book. Yeah.
Well, there's something in the very beginning when you introduce all of the characters. One of the people who speaks in this book, and we can talk about this, is the narrator, who is Julian. And there was a little line about, maybe he spreads himself a little thin sometimes. You put this in the description, and I wonder if that's also that sense that is this what people are saying? Actually, I'm writing a novel today, and I'm going to be
Yes.
it was Taskmaster yesterday, and it's something else tomorrow.
Well, it's quite fun to bitch about yourself, seeing as you put. And I put myself in some of the other books. I'm in a sort of cameo role in Briefs Encountered as me, but everyone dreads seeing me walking into the village shop. Oh, not him again. And he's a sort of tired old has-been. So that's quite funny. So yes, and I'm the narrator in this book. And I wasn't going to be, actually. In the first draft, it wasn't me. And I was trying to find the voice of the narrator. And it wasn't really working. And then I'm well aware when people read a book by me, they kind of, I'm told, hear my voice in their head. So I thought, well, it's just easier to make it me. And by coincidence, I in the book, I know all the people from different parts of my life, be they drug dealers or people I've worked with, and I know Jane the dresser, and Jane the dresser is a sort of very accurate portrait of one of the dressers I've worked with.
The way the book is presented, we get it's bits of Jane's diary, it's newspaper cuttings, it's conversations on WhatsApp. Julian, the narrator, kind of intervenes every once in a while and says, let me explain to you a little bit about something. But he has sort of access to all the documents, as it were. He has access to all of these things. He doesn't know anything. Every once in a while says, don't know how this person ended up, so bitter. But he has access to the sort of, to the private papers. Every once in a while you get something like, now we're going to see the letter from Peter's wife to the GP. That kind of took me by surprise, that letter somehow. Was that always the I guess, how the story is going to be presented? Because it's not, a linear narrator from the beginning to the end.
Yes, well,
it's all voices like that.
Yes, it happened because when I do book events with the Bolds, I look at it and you meet people, and a lot of parents said, oh, my child's a reluctant reader, and the Bolds books, because they're heavily illustrated, didn't seem too daunting, it's not a lot of pages of prose. And I thought, well, actually, when I started to write this, a lot of adults are reluctant readers as well. And I know lots of my friends never read a book, they just think, it just doesn't occur to them. So I wanted it to be, when you pick it up and flick through it, there's lots of different sections. And I like books with diaries in. And so there isn't that bit of prose I read about Jane. That's one of the few bits like that. And I when my agent said, do a murder mystery, I thought, well, I better go and read a few and get a hang of it. And there's one called, I can't remember who it's by, called The Verdict. Do you know that book? Well, I suspect they'll know in Cheltenham. Unless I've got the title wrong. It's called The Verdict.
It did come up in the event. I don't know if there was a huge overlap between this and the audience I did this morning with Polly Toynbee, but she mentioned the book that she'd written called The Verdict, and I'm guessing it's not that one.
No. You lead a full life, don't you?
It's all about range.
Anyway, that book, if I've got the title right, I'm sure it's called The Verdict. It's all emails. And yes, is it called The Verdict? The Appeal. Thank you. And what was her name?
Janice Hallett.
Yes, we got there in the end. Thank you.
Yeah. The Verdict is like the prequel, and then The Appeal, isn't it? Yeah.
It's called The Appeal. Yes. Yeah, and the whole book is just emails, and so you don't get any descriptions. You have to imagine all the characters for yourself. Anyway, I enjoyed that book, and so that was sort of my part of my thinking in this.
But you said a moment ago that you were trying to find the voice for the narrator. Even though there isn't much dialogue in the kind of conventional way, there are lots of voices in the book because we have, the director has to sound different from the critic's blog, which has to sound different from the Guardian review, which has to sound different from the bits on WhatsApp. And so you are finding voices all the time, presumably.
Oh, yes. And they're all, I mean, as you do, they're all people I know. And they were very clear in my head as to who was who. And they're all very different.
Would you read a little bit from the director? I think there's a bit of
yes.
one of the directors.
Yes.
Also unbearable.
The director, I'm sorry, yes, he's terrible. Tis based on somebody. Directors can be quite full of themselves.
This one also is the author of the play. He's the playwright and the director.
Yes,
and
he wrote...
And he thinks the play is very good.
Wrote and directed Leopard Spots, which is the hit play that they are all... I can't find... Oh, here's mine. Page 27. One moment, caller. So this is him in the programme notes he wrote. If you went to see this hit play, Leopard Spots, and bought the programme, this is what you would read. As a playwright, the creative process is often fraught with agonies and frustrations, but Leopard Spots seem to almost write itself. The burden of the task in my gifted hands was not, on this occasion, too heavy to bear. Leopard Spots has been incubating in my mind for some years, of course, and when my imagination was fully dilated, it slid into the Moses basket of dramaturgical destiny, with the merest twinge. More of a sigh than a contraction. It has been said that the precision and power of my writing owes much to Terence Rattigan and Noel Coward. But in this piece, I must acknowledge a debt to Joe Orton too, and perhaps a nod to Oscar Wilde. And even dear Ben Jonson. On the surface, Leopard Spots is a love story with a twist, but by setting it in an exotic wilderness, I have deftly incorporated subtle references to colonialism and even 19th century slave culture, which I hope the more educated members of the provincial audiences will not fail to notice. What might appear to be simple entertainment and amuse-bouche for the weary theatre-goer, in fact, has much more to offer. Woven into the script are the names Melpomene and Thalia, wearers of the sock and buskin, symbols of comedy and tragedy in ancient Greek theatre. The presence of a leopard, both feared and revered, similarly represents the yin and yang dilemma of human existence. It is a benevolent god, malevolent agent, or both. Symbolic of strength, courage, and determination, a sign of royalty for some, purveyor of death and destruction to others. Nature, in all its magnificent glory, may take our breath away, both literally and metaphorically. Coexistence and tolerance are the keys to survival for big cats and humans. For all the hilarity and laughter in the play, this is the profound wisdom the characters in Leopard Spots strive to grasp. The storeroom in the play is, of course, a metaphor for human knowledge. But no amount of wisdom can save you from nature should you break the rules. I hope you enjoy the entertainment on some, if not every level. This is my first book event on this book, so it's nice to read, nice to get laughs when I thought there might be.
Dear Ben Jonson.
Dear Ben Jonson.
Dear Ben Jonson. Melpomene, who's like someone's driver, it turns out. Very glamorous character. I presume that kind of thing, when you're kind of sending up a voice, is that fun?
Yes, it's all about fun. You know, I'm a very lightweight person, and so I only really have lightweight thoughts. And
unlike Trevor Millicent, who's layer upon layer in his play.
Yes, and through different mediums, the point's always the same, really, to make people laugh, whether that's on the stage or in writing a book, and I do amuse myself.
The thing that she just talked. So this is Trevor's play. Leopard Spots, which is the play which is on tour and which everything kind of revolves around. We get a description of it quite early in the book. It sounds I mean, ghastly in some ways. And I wonder if you can say something about what you had to construct for that, because we don't see it, we don't watch this play from end to end, but you needed to construct something with, I don't know, a certain kind of characters, a certain scale, a certain, scope for popularity.
Yes, and it was just a sort of thing floating around that they were all working on, and I did contemplate whether I needed to share it with the reader, really, what actually happens on stage. But as we get nearer to the, let's call it an incident, it became necessary. So I had to work out what the play was, and but that was interesting for me. And the sort of characters, the characters I'd written were playing on stage as well as off stage, and how they might interact, and how the opportunity might arise for murder.
One of the ways you get a really good sense of the play, I think, is also not seeing things happening, but things like the bitchiness that happens in the WhatsApp group between the actors. And one says, well, you're just playing for laughs, you're missing that, this could potentially be such a beautiful, tragic scene, and you're playing for laughs. You really get a sense, I think, of essentially the pretensions of the playwright and what he thinks, this masterpiece he thinks that he has created.
Yes.
I'm very glad. That's a relief. I'm very glad you think so. You said, Julian, this is your first event for this book, so you're now going to be on the road talking about it.
Yes.
Can you describe what your relationship is to it now? I mean, I saw recently on Twitter you posted that you've been reading the audiobook, I think, recorded the audiobook, which I imagine was fun. But are there moments when you're doing something like that where you think, still this book, still these characters? Or is there a bit of, this is rather good. I feel like you're allowed to be smug if you've written the book.
No, I know what you mean. There was a point actually towards the third edit, which seemed to go on a long time, when I was thinking still this book, and I was way past the delivery date, when in my mind I thought, well, I'll have that, free up that whole part of my brain, and it was still going on. And then when finally it went to print, I missed it, and I kept going back to the document and fiddling around with it. And I narrate in the audio book. I do myself, obviously, but I also do the part of Ken, who is the theatre critic, for which I do my all-purpose northern accent. So I enjoyed that. But no, they've got about 6 different actors. And when I was recording the book, I kept pleading with the technician to play me a bit of someone doing that, and that was a thrill. Because that's like when The Bolds was put on stage at the Unicorn Theatre once or twice, and so when you see what you've had in your mind on stage, it was a similar thing to hear it. So I think I haven't had the finished audio book yet, but I'm excited for that.
You said that the point at which finally it was kind of dispatched and went to press and you missed it a bit. Does that mean you rush into writing another book, or does it not work like that?
Well,
is it just one day?
It's a 2-book deal.
I'm so sorry.
So, like it or not. No, I've had. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself because I haven't written a word of it yet. But this is a sort of satire about the theatre, or it's all set in the theatre, and I thought it might be nice in the next book if Jane moves on to work in television, and in some. I'm not sure how she's going to evolve between this book and the next, but anyway, she's going to be working in television, and so that's a world I know a lot about as well, full of similarly dreadful people.
And Jane at the heart of it, thank God.
Yes,
thank God
yes.
for Jane being a nice person in the middle of it.
Yes.
Do you look forward to the writing?
Oh, I love writing. I don't mind what I write. I just like it, and I like it more and more. You know, I remember my earlier books thinking, oh, it just seems so daunting and a mountain to climb. But I released myself of that pressure with this one, and they're very nice. My publishers, they didn't keep asking. You know, they didn't make me feel like I had to write 2,000 words a day. And in fact, I bumped into David Williams in Regent's Park, as you do. And when I was starting this, and I said, 1,000 words a day. And he said, well, you don't have to write 1,000 words a day if you don't want to. And you don't.
This is what they never tell you.
No, and it took... Do you write 1,000 words? Do you give yourself a deadline?
No, can't imagine like that.
No, but I did in my other books. Slavishly, you know, however long it takes, still there at midnight. But I only write for a few hours in the morning. And I can't wait to start because things percolate overnight. And so it was... I really liked it. And
very importantly, this sounds like a weird thing to say, but you actually wrote it yourself, which not everybody does.
No.
And there was a little mention at the beginning of...
I put a disclaimer in at the beginning because I know there is a suspicion with celebrity authors that we don't do the hard graft ourselves, and that...
which is sometimes true.
Which is sometimes true, and I don't know how they can sleep at night. I know who they are. I know who some of them are.
Yeah.
No, what's the point in that? I want to write it, obviously, myself. And it's a funny thing when you finish a book and then you send it out into the world, because it's like it's grown up then, you know. It's up to the book, isn't it? I mean, I'm here to help it along, but you know what I mean? It's all grown up.
And also, it's sort of, there isn't any kind of evolution. I mean, I know that if you're going to be doing stand-up and you do a whole run, most things are going to be kind of set, because that is also writing, and it's very scripted and it's very kind of tight. But also, there's always tomorrow night and the next night and the next night. This is going to be the same book a year from now.
And also, it's a secret thing, you know. No, I don't show it to anyone when I'm writing it.
Right.
When I finish a draft, I send it to my editor, but I don't sit in bed with my husband saying, listen to this.
This bit's also really funny.
Yeah, no, I don't. And he'd go into the other room if I did, I think. So no, it's just in my head. And I like that. And especially if I'm on tour, doing, you know, nice to escape in the hotel room or something into a different world.
Well, I was wondering that, because I know that you'll be back at Panto this year, which is very exciting. But presumably it means that the writing is going to happen alongside whatever else you're doing. It's going to be a place you go that is not on stage at the Palladium or in front of a TV camera. It's a separate place.
Yes, it fulfills a different need, I think. And so I don't know when I'll start. Actually,
what is your deadline?
She hasn't said. I don't know. No.
I want your editor. She sounds great.
Yeah, she is. I think there is probably a vague... She'll have something in mind, but I think she knows. And I said when I signed the deal, well, before that, when I went to meet her, I said, I respond ever so well to compliments. Just so you know, when I send you a draft. And so I get these flowery, these marvellous emails. So she took that on board, and I think she knows I don't like demanding emails either.
And does she give a good compliment to this editor?
She gives great compliments,
Excellent.
yes. And also, she came on walks with me with my dog, and we were sort of chewing over the different characters, and that was very nice.
Right. Someone said, I can't remember who it was, that when a writer asks you what you really thought of their book, what they really want is 3,000 words of closely argued praise.
I know.
I love that. So it's not just kind of general praise, and also page 7 is amazing, and this word is so great.
It's like when people come backstage after a show, you only have to say how marvellous it all is. You don't want anything else.
So I'm going to go to questions for the audience. This slightly risky moment. Only nice things. We'll have one right here in the front. We have about 15 minutes. We'll take as many as we can.
Hello.
If you just wait for the microphone to come to you, please, so everyone can reach you. Microphone just there, and then we'll take more questions.
Hi,
We'll
Julian.
go at the back. And then
You lived at Goldenhurst, didn't you?
Yes.
Was there any ghosts of Noel Coward there at all?
There were 4 ghosts in Noel Coward's house, and I know this because I was aware, but a woman came round what was her name? Chrissy Eiley. Do you know her? She's a journalist. Anyway, she's psychic and she had divining sticks and she went round the whole house and there was, in the kitchen, a 17th century washerwoman. There was Jack, Noel's lover, in the back bedroom. Noel Coward himself was in one of the front rooms and there was a confused youth in the middle bedroom.
Of course there was.
But they died down after a while. When I first moved in, they were all rattling around, and apparently that's what they do to for fun, you know, and to test you. And I sold the house now. I don't live there anymore. But the person I sold it to, they all came alive again and gave him a hard time.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Not the one I was expecting. We have one at the back there, and then front, and then we'll come here. We'll take as many as we can.
Hello. Ooh, it's not. Is it working? Oh, it's working. Hello, Julian.
Hello.
May I say I'm so pleased to be here. I loved you for a long time.
Oh.
My name is Jane, and I'm curious to know what led you to choose the name Jane for your dresser.
Well, she wasn't called Jane right through until this second edit. She was called Helen, the name of the dresser that she was based on. And then I thought, well, I shouldn't use her name, you know. It didn't seem quite right. And it's not entirely her. She's a kind of combination of different dresses. Anyway, I thought, what should I call her? And I phoned Helen up, actually, and I said, I'm going to have to change your name to Jane. And no offence, she thought it was common. So she said, can it be Jane with a Y? So that's how she is, Jane with a Y.
Presumably you are not, from your expression, you're not Jane with a Y.
Oh, she's Jane with a Y,
There we
yes. Oh, how awful.
Lost the customer.
No, she said it was common, I didn't.
Yes. And she's a great character. We love her. She's
yes.
great. Like all Janes, obviously. Question over there.
Hello, my name's Samantha and I used to be a dresser. I've got two questions. First is, how do you write? Is it on a laptop or an old Remington typewriter or with a pencil and paper? And the second one is, what are you reading now?
Yes, they're good questions. I write on a laptop, and I sort of wish I wrote longhand. You know, it sounds more romantic, doesn't it? And
With a quill.
with Muriel Spark, my favourite, she used to write longhand in an exercise, but without ever crossing out a line, because she had the whole sentence beautifully formed. I can't claim to do that. Now I write sort of between 10 and 12 is the best time in the morning. And I don't work in a study or anything. I like to work at the kitchen table. I live on quite a busy road, and I like the distractions of seeing a nice fight. Or drug deals happen as well in my part of North London. I quite enjoy that. And you're near the kettle and you're near the biscuit tin, and it feels less formal, and you've got a dog down there next to you. So that's...
Sorry. How do you keep the thread going? I mean, you were talking about working backstage, you were talking about working on tour. If you've got a gap in the middle, how do you remember? How do you pick it up again?
Well, usually, so if I've got I know what you mean, but if I've got a couple of hours at the beginning of the day, I mean, I write in my dressing room. I might fiddle with it a bit, and I might write a few lines, but I can't really get into it properly. And I don't have any trouble picking up, you know, where I left off. I never read back either. I never read through, and not until I've finished telling myself the story, really. And you plan it out, and you think, oh, this is what's going to happen, and then in the writing of it, something happens. And in fact, in the second draft, I realised that the murderer wasn't the person I thought it was.
Oh, was
So-
someone different in the first?
It was, yeah. So I defy you to guess when you're reading it who the murderer was, because I didn't know.
What was that process of, sorry, we'll come to the next question in a moment. What was that process of plotting like? You said that there were these kind of two stages. The first one where a lot is revealed too soon. As it is at the moment, in the final version, there's quite a lot that happens before we get to the Palladium. There's a whole kind of tour. What was that process like of adding the details? Because it feels like the plotting is so intricate and feels like it must have been fun, but also very, very hard work, just keeping those threads going.
Yeah, there's a lot of plates to keep spinning, I suppose you might say. And sometimes I would write, spend a week writing Jane's diary. But that's not how it reads in the book, because there's all sorts of WhatsApp groups and newspaper articles slotted in later. I did go on holiday, and I thought I've got to do the book, and so I wrote for 2 hours every morning in my hotel room before I went swimming or did anything nice, and that was all a waste of time. I got stuck into, I went off, when you go off at a tangent, I started writing a whole story for Ken, who is he's a very bitter theatre critic, and in the editing process, I kept saying, because they will move that there, we'll just put this over here, come back to that later. And I kept saying, well, what about all that stuff I wrote? We'll come back to that later. And what she meant really was, you've wasted your time. And I went off-piste, and which is, sometimes it can be a really good thing to do, but in that case, it wasn't, unless I could write a whole new book about Ken.
There's Ken's the other story, like the alternative Ken's
Yes.
version of the story.
Yeah.
The cutting room floor.
Maybe I
stuff.
needed to do that to have a backstory in my head for Ken.
Yes, here, right in the front.
Hang on.
Exactly equidistant from the two microphones. So that was very badly planned. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. 2 questions. My name's Valerie.
Oh.
I know. What made you call your dog Valerie?
I called her Valerie. She looked like a Valerie.
Thank you.
And I liked Valerie Singleton when I was growing up. And, she was a very, like yourself, refined, elegant, serene dog. And, yes, we miss her. She was good to write next to, because she would just sort of fix you with her beady eye. Unlike Albert, who used to snore.
And my second question, this isn't working. My second question is, if you had to choose just one genre out of everything that you do, what would it be?
You mean out of comedy,
Pantomime,
panto,
reading.
writing?
I've seen you in panto.
Right.
I mean,
What do you think I should choose?
what earns you the most money?
Well, it's not writing. I don't know. I mean, thank goodness I don't have to choose. I like the variation, the truth is. I quite like being the centre of attention on tour, and then I quite like being at home and writing. If I had to choose, I would probably say the stand-up, because it's mutually beneficial. So I get make people laugh, and then I feel better as. Is it the hardest? Well, it's all a load of nonsense. I know, I think writing might be harder. I don't know. But anyway, I don't have to choose. Yeah.
Yeah, no one's actually going to make you choose. I'll take one more question, and then actually I might end by asking you to read the prologue, which seems like a strange place to end. Can I take one more question before
What
we
about
do
these
that?
poor neglected people over here?
Yes, I'm waiting. I was hoping for a hand on that side, but
Anyone
thank
got
you.
a-
All the way
look.
at the back. Thank you very much. Oh, is there one here as well? Okay, we'll take 2 more questions. Gentleman there, and then here in the third row.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for including us. I just wondered, how did your partnership with Paul Merton get started? Because I know it's long-standing and it's not one that I would have guessed at.
I know, it's an unlikely friendship. But Paul Merton and I were both, if you go way back in time to when the alternative comedy circuit was just rooms above pubs, and I'm talking like 83. Paul would know because he's got that sort of memory. He could tell you exactly where it was, but I think it was, and he was then performing 1983. He was the man in the pyjamas, and I was Julian Pieface. And he has an ability to, he can write really good innuendos, Paul, and so we became friends, and he used to come round to my bedsit in New Cross, and he would write this filth for me. But he would always, I remember you'd open the door, and he would always say something funny just to walk in, and he used to say things like, "I've followed your career with a bucket and spade." So yeah, it's a long time, and I've started doing, he does an improv show now at the Comedy Store sometimes, and with his wife Suki, I've started going, and that's like old times.
Must have been amazing to write with. I mean, I'm thinking about the actual writing you did, like the first book. But it's a really particular kind of brain he has, I think.
He does.
It's a really particular kind of comic brain.
Yes, and he's one of those people, I never really know if something's funny until I've said it on stage, whereas he does.
Right. One last question just there. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello. Hello, Julian.
Where are you?
I'm here.
Third row.
Oh, hello.
Hiding. I just wanted to ask you, if and when I read your book, am I going to laugh?
I hope so. No, I hope so. I mean, it feels...
Money back guarantee.
yeah, no, I'm sure you would. I feel boastful saying, "Oh, yes, you wait." But no, it's my intention to make you laugh. Actually, right from the beginning, and I'll read you the prologue now, and if you like the taste of that. See who has segued into that?
Someone's done this before.
And then I'll sign books for anyone not called Jane. Dear reader, you know me, I suspect. I am a camp comic and renowned homosexual. Let's get that out of the way straight away. I'm apparently the master of the rolls, the mistress of the brioche, and the meat and two veg of innuendo. So what am I doing here in the gingham-curtained world of cosy crime? Please don't think that I'm just an opportunistic slapper whose literary agent told him that this was where the money is and to jump on the bandwagon. I can assure you it was not for the financial rewards. I was set up for life in the early 90s when I did an advert for Toilet Duck. And I was, lest we forget, the voice of Scottish laminate flooring for nigh on 15 years. Had I not squandered the cash on illegal stimulants and instead settled down sensibly to a quiet life somewhere dreary on the south coast, I might never have troubled the general public again. But alas, we can all be wise after the event. Anyway, this genre has all become too cosy for its own good, if you ask me. It needs shaking up a bit. The reader has too often been visualised as a spinsterish Tory dressed in pastel shades whose idea of a wild night is a bitter lemon with not too much ice. This is nonsense. Mature people were young once. What they don't know about recreational sex, you could write on the back of an incontinence pad. I did a gig on a cruise ship recently, and they loved the filth. I got a Mexican wave of Zimmer frames after my encore, which was a song called Sometimes Life's a Cunt, written for me by that well-known family entertainer, Gary Wilmot. No, circumstances have driven me here. I was as horrified as everyone else about the murder at the world's most famous theatre, more so as I know every inch of the Palladium stage intimately from my tenure there in Panto each year. I have stood on the very spot where it happened, delivering my usual nonsense, and little suspecting that a person I knew well would one day die a horrible and premature death right there. I feel it's my duty to write this book for you to read, and along the way you can learn what show business is really like. It's not all air kisses and fingering the ensemble. Let's start with the scene of the crime, the London Palladium, an extraordinary place. It has a magic about it that I've never experienced anywhere else, unless you count the time I was stuck in a lift with the Lowestoft rugby team. As you walk from the darkness of the wings into the light on stage, something happens as if you were entering another sphere, a bit like taking your first bite of a walnut whip. I speculate that it may have something to do with those who have trod these boards before you, amazing performers from every age, including Louis Armstrong, Judy Garland, Bruce Forsyth, and Claire Balding. It is as if the energy and goodwill of all these people infuses you, enters you via the portal of some psychic anal fissure that opens up during the heightened state of nervous excitement you feel as you wait for your cue, which makes what happened on that dreadful night all the more surprising. Something so dark and evil, it had no place there or anywhere, like finding Jacob Rees-Mogg in a gay sauna. This is a story of tragedy and revenge, and I have, in my tireless research, uncovered many layers, both surprising and horrifying, to finally reveal the truth of what happened to cause this curtain call to murder. Fasten your seatbelts. As the Chihuahua said to the Great Dane, it's a lot to take in.
Julian and Clary, ladies and gentlemen. Go buy your books.